What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I wanted to show the build that I'm taking into day 1 of the final shape, and I'll be running the campaign on Prismatic, and this is actually the first character that I'll be starting with, which is the Titan. That's because I want my third character to be the Warlock, because I'm going into the raid on Warlock, but also because I am the most excited for this build in particular. Like, first of all, it just looks awesome. But when I was theory crafting everything, this was the build that I'm most excited for because we won't have the full suite of fragments on Prismatic right at launch. So it centers around point contact cannon brace, which has the perk Hammer of the Gods. Defeating targets with your Thunderclap melee restores melee energy. Targets near you when you use your Thunderclap suffer lightning strikes and become jolted. Being amplified increases the damage of these lightning strikes. So basically, we're going to be trying to get as many thunderclaps as we can. So we have 100 strength and 100 resilience, of course, and then as high of discipline as we can get. So I wanted to talk about the exotic first because that's kind of where everything stems from. So I talked about what it does, and then here's just some community insights. And then if we go to one of these, this one. So Thunderclap's actually getting some buffs, and for a long time I've been saying point contact cannon brace is one good buff away from actually being really strong. So we'll get additional damage resistance versus PvE combatants when activated. We don't know the damage resistance, but either way, any DR will be nice, and you'll see we'll get a ton of DR. So you can be in the fray constantly with this build when I break everything down. So they're increasing the minimum damage, so just the quick Thunderclap by 20%, but the full max damage by 33%. So that max damage one is going to hit really hard, plus we'll get the lightning strikes and jolt from point contact cannon brace. And then it also is better in PvP. And then if we go down here, it talks about knockout. Increased bonus damage granted to powered melee attacks versus PvE combatants from 25 to 50%. So knockout used to buff your charged melee by 25%, and I think your regular melee by 50%. Now it does the charged melee by 50%. And then it doesn't trigger health regeneration, but now based on the tier of the combatant that you kill, you'll get a chunk of health back. So every time you're killing enemies, and presumably, so say you take out like 4 enemies, 4 miners, that could be 200 health points. It might be per enemy, and we're going to be taking out a ton of enemies with this build. So I want to talk about that first, and now we'll just look at Prismatic. So this is why I wanted to make this build, because these are the things that you start with. They've told us what you start with. So we're going to go with the Blade Fury, and I'll get into why we're doing that in a minute. And then I'm going with Thruster, but you can go with whatever class ability you want. And then I use Strafe Lift. Obviously, we're using Thunderclap. So these are the things that you start with. So obviously, Thunderclap, you can go Shackle or Pulse, and I'll make cases for both. And then Knockout, obviously, we want for that health regeneration and the increase to melee damage. And then Diamond Lance as well is going to be really nice just for freezing enemies. But again, these are just what you start with. So then if we look at the fragments, we're going to have Facet of Dawn. So powered melee hits against targets make you radiant, and then final blows will make your allies radiant. So you're going to be radiant all the time. So 25% damage bonus. So right off the bat, that's massive. Then Facet of Hope, while you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. When I get to the mods, I'll get to why that's important. Facet of Protection, while surrounded by enemies, you are more resistant to incoming damage. So we have the DR from Thunderclap that it's getting in the final shape, and then we're just going to have even more DR when we're surrounded by enemies, which we will be all the time. Facet of Purpose, picking up an Orb of Power grants either Amplified, Resto, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield. So this is why, based on your super. So this is why we don't want Thunder Crash, and this is why we want Blade Fury, because every time we pick up an Orb of Power, we're going to get Woven Mail, so even more DR. So you can see all the DR, and when we get to the artifact mods, there's even more DR. And then Facet of Ruin. This increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or frozen target. So we're not going to have solar ignitions really, but the freezing is going to come into play from our Diamond Lances. So that is the aspects and fragments. And now if we look at our weapons, So I'll just talk about it first because I'm here. So Bastion, reworked Saint's Fist perk, dealing damage with melee increases your charge rate, damage, and reload speed. So when we do a melee, we're going to get Radiant, and that is going to make Bastion hit even harder, like Radiant does, but then also this new perk, Saint's Fist, is going to make it charge faster and hit for more damage. And then landing a majority of your pellets in a burst increases melee damage. So we're getting the increase from knockout and the thunderclap buff and just all this stuff. So Bastion is pretty much the perfect pairing. So now I'm going to look at my Titan here. And again, we've got 100 strength and we're just going to be feeding into stuff. So a big thing with Prismatic is Transcendence. When you're Transcendence, you get a better grenade, which on Titan, it's like a shackle grenade and a jolting grenade, like a pulse grenade, I think. So you'll be getting that. And then so you throw the grenade and then you're just tossing out point contact cannon brace thunderclaps. So it's going to hit super, super hard during Transcendence. And then when we don't have Transcendence, again, I'm using Thruster. And then where Thruster comes in is that will change with permeability. I'm guessing it's going to change to your equipped super. So this will change my Indebted Kindness to Strand. And then why that's important is, again, you want to be Transcendent as much as possible because that's when you get like enhanced abilities. And kinetic weapons do both sides of your meter. And then I obviously have a stasis weapon, or you could run a strand weapon or an arc weapon. It all just kind of depends on what you're doing. But because we're going to be doing so many arc melees, that's a light energy source. So I wanted something that, obviously I want Bastion for that synergy with the melee, but then I wanted something that I could hopefully get Strand in here. So every time we do our Thruster, that's going to activate permeability if we have our sidearm out, and then we're going to be able to do strand damage. And then we've got the Slammer because swords are cracked from the artifact. But before I get to the artifact, I'll just quickly go over the mods. So we've got double hands on because we're going to be getting a ton of melee kills. So this is going to give us our super really fast. And then just Harmonic Siphon just because it fits. And it actually, I'm not sure how that synergizes, probably with Berserker. So anyways, the Harmonic Siphon is whatever. We're going to be meleeing most things. So then double heavy-handed, it says equipping multiple copies of this mod increases the potency of the generated orb and reduces the duration of the cooldown. So normally it's a 10-second cooldown. This will take it down to 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds that we get a melee kill, we're going to be making an orb. Or I could take this off and run triple heavy-handed if I want, but instead I'm running impact induction, causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. So this is going to give us even more grenades, and again, we can go with pulse grenades or shackle grenades. That one's up to you. On this, just the rainbow of resistances or whatever you need for the activity. Here, we want everything to feed in, so this is just going to give us even more health, even though Knockout's going to be giving us health back, but this will just help with survivability. This will help with our melee cooldown, and this helps with all our ability cooldowns. So again, tons and tons of abilities, and then every time we cast Thruster, we're getting a chunk of melee, chunk of grenade, and a chunk of everything with distribution. So, yeah, basically this is all just built around having our melee up as often as possible. And now if we go back to here, so I've detailed everything, but I was waiting for today because of the artifact, and I just made some notes. So artifact mods, Elemental Siphon. So Elemental Siphon, rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super, create an elemental pickup. So matching your super, which this is going to make tangles for us. So that's kind of nice, whatever. It's just kind of a cool thing, and that'll synergize with Bastion. And then the next thing we have is Creeping Chill. So this stasis weapon final blows against slowed or frozen targets release a burst that's slow. So here we have Cold Steel. So this will synergize with Chill Clip and Cold Steel. I should put backup mag on this because these spec mods are going away. So Cold Steel will proc this Creeping Chill every time. And then that's just going to create a slowing burst. So again, this is just going to help us like survive when we're in the fray because everything will be slowed. And then what else do we have? Radiant Orbs. So right here, while you have a solar or prismatic, so we're on prismatic, picking up an orb makes you radiant. So we're already getting radiant from the melee hits. But again, this is just another way to feed into it. Galvanic armor. So this is the big one. This is what's going to make this build even more OP. While you have an arc or prismatic subclass, so we're on prismatic, incoming damage from combatants is reduced while amplified. So we're always killing jolted targets because of point contact cannon brace applying jolt. So we're pretty much always going to have galvanic armor up. Plus I talked about all the other DR sources on this build already. And then we have shield crush. This one sounds insane. While you have woven mail, so we'll just focus on woven mail, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. So we're getting increased damage from the buff to Thunderclap, the Bastion with Saint's Fist synergy, and we're getting it from Shield Crush. So it recharges our melee faster and deals increased damage. And then while you have Amplified or Radiant, which we're going to have both of these all the time, your grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. So this is where you would want a pulse grenade, because pulses hit really hard, so they're going to recharge quicker and deal more damage. But shackle grenades would also be nice in harder content, because obviously they can suspend enemies, so it'll just help kind of keep enemies at bay. And then transference, gain increased grenade damage and melee damage while transcendent. So I talked about how we're going to be trying to get transcendent all the time, and then again increased grenade damage, so that will work better with a pulse grenade. And then weapon final blows while transcendent return. So we're not really going to be getting too many weapon final blows, because we're just going to be chucking out our grenades and meleeing everything. And then there's also a few sword ones, but this is only if you want to run a sword. I just did this for an example, but as I showed, I have some grenade launchers that I may use, a Wendigo or a Cataphract. But if you're using a sword like I showed, we've got Overload Sword, so that will overload enemies, and this works on not only champions, but other enemy types as well. Blade Stamina, rapidly defeating combatants with a sword refunds ammo, so we're going to get ammo back. And then Argent Blade, my guess is this is a 15% damage bonus on top of like anything. So on this one we don't have any damage perks, but there is like Falling Guillotine, which can get like Frenzy and Bait and Switch, so you could even run that. It's all up to you, but yeah, I'm not so concerned about the weapons with this build, other than Bastion for the synergy with the melee damage. I'm more concerned about how can we have our melee up all the time. And I've never really made a Thunderclap build, a point contact cannon brace build. I've used Heart of Inmost Light with Thunderclap, and I love it. And you could do that as well. You could pretty much just copy and paste this build, but substitute out Hoyle for point contact cannon brace, and it's going to pretty much do the same thing. But I've been waiting to use this exotic for a long, long time. So yeah, I'm very excited. And then when Prismatic comes out, I'm just going to adjust my stats as needed. But anyways, that's it for the video. So I hope it helps, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and take care.